Israel seems to always be on the edge.
As we speak, there are sirens sounding in southern Israeli communities.
Israel is embroiled in a war with the Arab nations that surround her.
Imagine you're thrust into the middle of the chaos and you need to make the big decisions.
The road to peace is no easier. In many ways, it is harder than the road to war.
Both sides need to start negotiating.
You're at the negotiating table or on the phone with a foreign leader, or you're deciding whether to undertake a military action.
There can be no substitute for diplomacy.
Pressure is building tonight on Israel.
And the pressure keeps ratcheting up.
President Biden threatens to stop weapon shipments.
Arms shipments to Israel.
France and Britain issue a 12-hour ultimatum.
It's nearly constant protests.
No more Israel! No more Israel!
It's your job to protect the interests of Israel and the security of its people. And you know you can't cross your red lines.
This is the price that Israel is having to pay.
What is the red line for Israel?
But what are Israel's interests? Where are your red lines?
The two countries try again, and it's no more successful than the first.
Why is this round of negotiations going to work?
There is a security doctrine that has been tested in the real world over thousands of years. Against impossible odds, it provides clarity and direction every single time it is applied. Welcome to the Rebbe's Roadmap to Peace, Episode 3. Today we'll explore the 329 Security Doctrine, Torah's straightforward system that provides clarity on Israel's most complex security choices with the Lubavitcher Rebbe as our guide. The year is 878 BCE. And David, future king of Israel, is hiding in Judea's rugged hills, a fugitive from King Saul's wrath. Suddenly, a scout rushes over. Philistine raiders are looting warehouses of straw and hay, animal feed, in a nearby town. David orders his small group of men to prepare for battle. But the men protest. We're just a handful of fugitives. How can we take on the powerful Philistines? David declares we are going to fight. And the ragtag group prepares for war against the mighty adversary. This story appears in the book of Samuel. Now, Jewish law forbids putting one's life at risk for mere possessions. Why did King David risk everything for animal feed? Did David know something that we're missing? In fact, this simple story contains the guidance that provides clarity to Israel's most difficult security dilemmas today. We call it the 329 Security Doctrine. Remember the term, because that's how we're going to refer to it, the 329 Doctrine, or simply 329. Shabbat is a sacred day of rest. Many activities that are permitted during the week are forbidden on Shabbat. No cooking, no commerce, no carrying outdoors, even if it leads to great financial loss. But Jewish law also establishes a clear guiding principle. Human life overrides Shabbat. If someone needs medical help, you don't hesitate. You call the ambulance. If there's a security threat facing a community, Jewish law mandates that the residents go out immediately, even desecrating the Shabbat to fight off the threat. However, there is one unique scenario where Jewish law takes this to a whole new level. And this is the clause that the Rebbe emphasizes is the most crucial to Israel today. In a town near a border, even if the attackers are coming only for hay and straw, we must desecrate Shabbat and go out to fight them. Not only that, but even if they are only preparing to come, we must go out to confront them. Why are we instructed to risk life for property, mere hay and straw at that? The reason is, lest they capture the town and the entire land will be easier for them to conquer. The Rebbe explains the law.
In der Dine Shulchan Aruch, als das gefindt sich al Hagvul, al Asfarbelot nach Shulchan Aruch, auf dem Grenz. Und amit aufgeben hat dem Schal, hat die Amma, zu dem Tefach, wie viel sie soll nicht sein. Ich sollte dämmelt öffentlich nur einen ganzen Ort, wo jeden gefunden sich, und bei Pikuach Nefesh, die Nechot, die Meyo, die Nelef, die Revovo, die Kammer Revovis. Is unter demult is a viele Beschabbos. Darf man nehmen klein Neschek und nicht abgeben kein Tepech Beschalme. Wie bald a Brachmone Islami tut es, öffnet nur den ganzen Ort, wo Jeden gefunden sich, wo Jeden leben. A viele, als sie sagen, als sie kommen, a Liske, Teven, Bekash, weil das ist der Loschen in Schulchenor. Was mir versteht sich, wie viel die Schovi, die Bavert, von Teven, Bekash.
Picture this. You're at your Shabbat table and someone rushes in and informs you. Thieves are breaking into your warehouse at the edge of town. Now you know for certain that the looters have no intention of fighting. They just want to steal something entirely insignificant and retreat. Torah tells you you must take up arms, risk your life on Shabbat to prevent the breach. And this is what 329 teaches us. Even the slightest breach of your defenses must be treated as a life and death situation. It may look harmless now, but if it's not addressed, the opening, the vulnerability, will lead to loss of control and loss of life, God forbid. And that's why you must risk your life to prevent it. In this unique recording of a private conversation, the Rebbe explains how the 329 doctrine brings the minor infraction into focus.
Zog die woorden met de grenzen maar waar me daar komt naar geen zacht. Nu gaat die consequentie niet. De Nederland naar doen de podcast de Schulchenor dit is dat staat niet met die kofnevi. Maar dat we naar doen een nationaal die kasvitel. De jenen die maar een beetje groot, een beetje strooi. En dan nog zo wie die zijn gewaaid. Zien ze op de grond en dan nog het te zijn. Dat moet niet aspect met die Schulchenor. Zog tegen hem is, tegen schijf. Als abstaat Billboard, als vielen werden niet naar nationale worden. Onze zorgen werden niet gekascht zijn. Und dann noch die Einsätze die sind doch aber sein etliche Goy in dem Schädel, was von dort in der Nähe alles wie Korrespondent ist unschabes, als noch kommt das noch in 3 Tage. Das ist die unschabes durch, nach nennen der Nation. Und da stellen sich uns dann Peter Angles.
King David wasn't fighting over straw. The Talmud explains that he was safeguarding a border community from an incursion that, if left unchecked, would have constituted a threat to all of Israel. The Rebbe taught this paradigm hundreds of times, declaring it Torah's most foundational guidance to Israel's security today. In the real world, security questions don't present themselves in neat little boxes. The dilemmas are incredibly complex, a tangle of shifting threats, intelligence or perhaps a mere hunch of potential danger on the one hand, and countless other pressures on the other. The economy, an upcoming UN vote, regional tensions, these are not trivial challenges. They are legitimate concerns. And for a country the size of New Jersey, surrounded by enemies, every judgment call is a life and death decision. The 329 doctrine provides clarity, pointing out what is critical and what should be put on the back burner. 329 tells us to ask this question before and above anything else. Will this agreement, this position, this move lead to an opening of the land or to giving the adversary any type of foothold? And any other concern is secondary. You don't keep the peace at the expense of any compromise to actual physical security today or in the future. A classic case of the tension between hard security assets and the allure of a negotiated agreement of peace took place during the later 1970s and the early 80s. The United States was pressuring Israel and Prime Minister Menachem Begin heavily toward a peace treaty with Egypt. These talks became known as the Camp David Accords. On the one hand was normalization between Israel and Egypt along with the signing of a peace treaty. In exchange, Israel was pressured to give up the entire Sinai Peninsula along with its military installations, airfields, and oil wells to Egypt.
One of the agreements that President Sadat and Prime Minister Begin are signing tonight is entitled A Framework for Peace in the Middle East.
In a series of English letters, the Rebbe explains his position on the Accords to the Chief Rabbi of the UK, Rabbi Lord Emanuel Jacobowitz. I'm actually holding the original letters here, lent to us by the Kalms family of London. The Rebbe writes of the dangers of Camp David, explaining in the words of 329 specifically what Israel needs to be looking for in any security arrangement and what factors must be treated as mere distractions. The deciding factor, the Rebbe writes, is not what the enemy demands or promises, but whether it is a case of opening the land before the enemy. In other words, giving them an opportunity to breach the defenses. In regard to the liberated areas, all military experts, Jewish and non-Jewish, agree that in the present situation, giving up any part of them would create serious security dangers. No one says that giving up any part of them would enhance the defensibility of the borders. But some military experts are prepared to take a chance in order not to antagonize Washington and or to improve the international image, etc. The 329 doctrine makes clear that the facts on the ground must eclipse everything else. Hard security assets always trump soft promises of a future benefit. Exchanging something tangible for something malleable and intangible will never lead to a good long-term outcome. In the particular case of Camp David, the claim that for the sake of peace it is halachically justifiable to surrender the territories and the oil wells is hollow. For what was gained was not real lasting peace, but the promise of peace on paper. And from past and present experience, it is well known what such paper promises are worth. The Rebbe warned of the perils of Camp David dozens or even hundreds of times. After the accords were implemented, the Rebbe spoke of the terrible losses that resulted. One of the key points the Rebbe argued is that had Israel held strong, the peace treaty with Egypt would have been reached without all the highly dangerous concessions. In the practical world, tomorrow morning, when Israel is faced with a security dilemma, how are you and I to know what creates a strategic vulnerability, an opening, and what does not? The 329 Security Doctrine gives us 3 simple, specific factors to look at in every scenario. Number 1 is expertise. In situations when there's a judgment call to be made, there's an approach that Torah often employs. When someone is sick on Yom Kippur, how do we decide whether they're supposed to eat? We ask an expert in the field, a doctor, and we abide by their medical evaluation. And based on their expertise, we determine the course of action. When it comes to security as well, we seek the guidance of an expert in this specific field, security and defense. In the summer of 1982, in response to a host of terrorist attacks launched from Lebanon by the PLO, Israel embarked on an operation called Peace for the Galilee. Later it became known as the Lebanon War. 6 days into the fighting, responding to international pressure, the IDF stopped in its tracks.
Die München Bitochen der Anschützow haben gesagt mit klaren Werten, aber man darf gehen und Maschlim sein, das was man angehebt. Und als sie sagen sie noch mit Mord noch mehr Starkheit tegen Tischten, sollen sich jeder, mit wem sie reden, sollen annehmen sehr Hero, und das wird ein Hero von Schulchan Aruch, von den niedrigsten Städten. Als wenn ein München in Unione Bitochen, und das ist die Anschützow, sagen, als sie dürfen sich fühlen, wird das eine Anweisung von Schulchan Aruch, eine Anweisung von den niedrigsten.
The expertise we're looking for here is specific: defense and security alone. Now, who is not qualified to drive the answers to security dilemmas? Politicians, diplomats, the media. Brigadier General Ron Ronen Pecker was commander of the Tel Nof Air Base and one of Israel's most decorated fighter pilots. In October of 1975, he was in the United States testing the new F-15 for Israel's Air Force. During a wide-ranging 2.5-hour meeting with the Rebbe, the conversation touched on who should drive security decisions.
אותה תקופה שהייתי אצל הרבי, אז היה אותו הסכם שנחתם, מה שקוראים לו אותו הסכם שלום, שמדינת ישראל ויתרה בין היתר, גם על נכסים, זה על סיני שוויתרנו, מקורות הנפט ועוד כמה דברים, אוצרות טבע, ביניהם. רבי ביקר את זה בצורה מאוד חריפה. הוא אמר, לא מוותרים על אוצרות טבע, זה נכסים, למשל הוא אמר הנפט, הוא אמר, ועוד דברים כאלה, ועל קרקע, על דברים כאלו לא מוותרים. וכמובן שזה לא נכון לעשות, מי שצריך לקבוע את זה, זה מנהיגי הצבא, ולא המנהיגות האזרחית. מנהיגי הצבא לדעתו, הם היותר מתמצאים, הם הנלחמים, הם המנצחים, הם נושאים בתוצאות, והם צריכים לקבוע.
Pecker wrote a 5-page memo to his colleagues summarizing the meeting. We'll link it below. In Torah's view, political and diplomatic considerations have their place, but they may not take priority over security decisions. PR concerns cannot be guiding your actions on the ground. Your intelligence services, the diplomatic corps, the media, the entire political echelon are tools to be used in the employ of victory on the battlefield during wartime, or of security on the ground during peacetime. But the point is they are only here to help the security services provide security.
A Linie von Pikuach Nefesh auf Bris Agu, lassen fragen bei Refe, nicht bei Medinoli, nicht bei dem, was viel Tov mit dem Beiser Refe, mit dem Spital, nur bei dem Refe allein, warum der, was viel Tov mit dem Beiser Refe, kann sich haben andere Geschbeine. Ich kann sagen, der Geschbeine ist nicht gemerkt, nicht genäht gehalten, nicht berichtet, a viele Volk werden nicht gehalten, das ist hilfreich ein Ding.
During the intense debate surrounding Camp David, the Rebbe's position was challenged. In fact, there were some military experts who declared that the deal with Egypt was a good idea.
Gefragt bei einer von meinen Jiden, der nicht wusste, was sind. Hat gefunden, ein Licht so, was hat gesagt, aber man darf abgeben, nicht nur ein Schal, nur ein Schätzergott. Hat ihm gesagt, ich doch nicht teilen mit der Pläne Banschis so, hat ihn gefragt, ja, er sagt, kach. Wenn ich gefragt hat er gesagt, die teilen. Ist mir gegangen bei dem Misch so, und hat gefragt, die teilen, was sagt mit der Aufgabe, zieht der Fall wird das versprochen, Pikuach Nefesh oder teilen Macheri. Er hat gesagt, nein, Pikuach Nefesh, ich sage, wir sein mit Orgen gestorben. Wie bald aber ein Durchdruf für da hoffen, als in 3 Wochen und in einer Chedisch und in einer Jahr werden sich machen nach Schole Mamiti, ich lieb Schole Mamiti, in der Deutsche Marum, ist eine Warte auf Sakone, hohe Lissie von sämtlichen Rieden, bis aus Meister. Wo das ist ein Schakle-Vitari, nicht von Zobo, nur ein Schakle-Vitari von Chayichisch, von Cheshbenes, und dann Fall seien die Cheshbenes selber geschuchen.
So when there's a fork in the road, a decision to be made, you look to an expert in the field with a very narrow question. Is this an opening, a security vulnerability, or is it not? Which leads us to the next parameter. Number 2. Of all the security assets that exist, the 329 Doctrine teaches us that land, ground, actual terrain is the most vital for security. The law says we're worried about hay and straw lest the land become open before them. You can't patrol a treaty. You can't defend a promise. You can secure land. This is a fact of physics, and it's not unique to Israel. In fact, the first time the Rebbe modeled this concept, it was in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. It was the late 1960s, and neighborhoods across New York City were facing a surge of crime.
Crime is on the increase, in some instances overwhelming the capacity of law enforcement agencies.
Jews were leaving Jewish neighborhoods. They were leaving Brownsville, which was a Jewish neighborhood, East New York, which was a Jewish neighborhood, in the Bronx, University Heights, Jewish neighborhoods, and there was panic.
The threat wasn't terrorists per se, but the wave of murders, burglaries, and other crimes was very real. one community decided to stay. The Rebbe stood entirely alone and declared that retreating from homes, stores, synagogues, and schools would create unacceptable dangers to everyone who remained, and that picking up and running was, in no uncertain terms, not an option.
Kam Spun ist bei Israel, was man doch angeheben schrecken, dass die Schune, in welches da Yeshiva ist, und Bote mit Drosch, was sie werden angerufen, nicht durch Miyad, und das Eretz Megurei Ovi, wie das Eretz Knaan, man darf nur hören dem Teke von Yankiv und viert mir nicht, als bleibt die Schune der Linie von Bote Knessi, so Bote mit Drosch, es war Yankiv, und sie geht weg der ganze Linie, was kann machen.
New York City's Mayor John Lindsay came to discuss the deteriorating situation with the Rebbe.
We're going to take additional steps to provide security and peace for the community, the Crown Heights community. We think it's very important.
It is a test case.
Yeah.
And as I said before, it's not only for New York. It will be a test case for the United States, for many cities, and maybe in the world in general. In the book of Solomon and Proverbs, we repeat it many times that it's always easier and more beneficial to start something from the beginning than to let it go, and not only beneficial for the road, but it's also beneficial for the potential road.
In the case of a neighborhood, the homes, shops, and schools are the strategic positions. When it comes to national security, you must control the terrain that you need for strategic depth. There's no substitute for actual, tangible, physical land with geographic high grounds and natural borders.
Verweisen das Forscher den Terror, die prägt bei nicht so. Sie kommen oben Aki und wenn mit dort der Machete, sagt der Riech so, wie in Terror hat es genossen. Und das, was kann möglich sein, auch wie Terror, ist das nur der Gwul. Gefindt sich bei Yam und gefindt sich bei Tiolo und gefindt sich bei Hagovea, nicht wenn der Gwul Hamafsig geht durch in der Mittengas von der Stadt. Dort kommen sie sich so mit einhalten, mit der Chater. Der jetzt verhören sich aber an Numen Godel, Ageinländer, Lekach, kommt es für den mit Teilen von Krebitz wie Joshua, wird getan als Sache heimlicher Hei, bewegen zwar wenig sich nicht der Ankehren, und wo darf man oben den Täter mit jenem Täter, verdienen wir sein dort wo ich genug auf der Täter, und danach ist der ewigste Helfer. In der Weile soll man nach Rotwaffen, und es nicht hat wie Zochen mit dem Kniefes, was eines Verwundeten, wird nicht sein bei der Seelen, und der Seele wird sein, der Goldseelen kennt. Sagt man, so viel Maschiach bringen. Sie noch nicht zu Maschiach, noch nicht so, noch nie gekommen.
Take note that the point here is not the holiness of Israel. This is a basic security principle. In the English letters, the Rebbe explains that when it comes to any land at all, even if it's the most sacred location, the only question is whether you're creating a danger, an opening for the rest of the land, which in turn leads to mortal danger. The sanctity of the old city of Jerusalem, including the sanctity of the Kotel, would not justify sacrificing a single Jewish soldier. When it is a case of opening the land, as it is in the present situation in relation to Jerusalem, the old city, just as any other place, falls under the rule of risk to life, which mandates the taking up of arms on Shabbat to defend it. In other words, even the holiest territory must be held only because it assures security. While this applies anywhere in the world, what is unique to Israel is its huge concentration of Jews in a very small area, surrounded by hostile neighbors. For this reason, every inch of Israel has the law of a border town.
Als der lebt sich am Apollo in Vietnam, ist sie genug groß und genug stark, und das gefühlt sich mehr, wenn bekam Jomim, aber da ist nicht gegeben, weil sie mir erzählen sein, ist gewiss gut, Und aber nicht, hat geprüft, Sachen ist durchgefahren. In Eretz Hakedische der Maimed und Matze, weil man konnte sich nicht erleben, kein Durchfall nach Manelsland. Warum das redet sich wegen einem Eretz, wo sie da wie zwei, wie die Gemorre sagt, sie ist ein Bechumrius, ein Begashmius, und diese soll sein, wo sie soll stehen. In der Breitkeit darf man ihnen dort stehen mit der Breitkeit und mit der Starkkeit, und bis damals kann man sich nicht erleben, kein Ries von der Linie, von der Durchfall nach Manelsland.
For comparison's sake, the United States has 450 times more landmass than Israel, plus the luxury of 2 oceans and thousands of miles that separate it from any adversary. In 1969, General Ariel Sharon was being celebrated internationally as a tactical genius after the military victories he led in the Six-Day War. At a gathering in Kfar Chabad, Israel, he shared regards of a recent meeting with the Rebbe.
הרבי חזר ודיבר על דבר שדובר גם בשיחה בינינו לפני שנה וחצי, ואחר כך הוא דיבר על זה מספר פעמים וגם כתב מספר פעמים, זה בקשר לעניין הגבולות. את עניין יישוב השטחים. אומר שוב, לא מתוך אין מה להתנצל, אומר השטחים שלנו צריך ליישב את השטחים. הרבי אומר שצריך להפסיק להתנצל בעניין הגבולות. למה להסביר למה אנחנו יושבים על הגבולות, אלא צריך לראות את הגבולות הנוכחיים כגבולות של מדינת ישראל. הוא אומר, מה שצריך לקבוע בעצם, מה שצריך לקבוע זה ביטחון העם היהודי. זה מה שצריך לקבוע. ואם ביטחון העם היהודי תובע שאלה יהיו הגבולות, אז על הגבולות האלה צריך לשבת.
Israel's founders and military leadership agreed with what Torah is teaching here. In fact, its original security doctrine and defensive strategy were built around the principle that control of land, strategic depth with populations living on the land, are the most key security asset. In researching this video, we reviewed many security studies, and we searched for military experts who say that from a security perspective, Israel should give away any of the land it now resides on. We did find some who say essentially, yes, you need land in order to protect yourself, but what can you do? If we don't give away land, Israel will become an international pariah, or things like that. We couldn't find anyone who argues the point that in a simple, practical sense, Israel will be in a better security position by handing away land. Now, how this works is fairly simple. It's something any of us can understand. We'll start in the east and work our way around. Israel's border with Jordan is by far its longest. It's 300 miles long and loosely controlled throughout. Judea and Samaria, the west bank of the Jordan River, is Israel's central highland. This mountain ridge is essentially the country's spine, controlling the terrain both east and west of it. The mountains, over 3,300 feet at their highest point, provide direct line of sight to Tel Aviv and Ben Gurion Airport, as well as Israel's major seaports, industrial bases, power stations, and highways. By the way, the name Judea is the kingdom of Yehuda, led by King David and his dynasty 2,900 years ago. Its capital was right in these mountains here. About 100 years later, the northern mountain region, named after the city of Shomron, became the capital of the Kingdom of Israel. 65% of Israelis live in the areas that are dominated by these mountains. For a quick comparison, the borough of Manhattan is 13.5 miles long. Israel's heartland, if you can call it that, from after the West Bank, is 9 miles wide at its narrowest point. To give you a picture of what it takes to cross that, during the October 7th attack, the terrorists penetrated 15 miles into Israel with their pickup trucks. The eastern slopes of the mountain range drop 3,500 feet into the Jordan Valley, which is the barrier to an invasion from the east. An attacking force would need to cross the Jordan River, then the open terrain, and then climb up into Israel all under fire. Moshe Dayan wrote, "There is no substitute for the Jordan Valley. Its location and unique topographical features make it Israel's only feasible eastern border." The Arava Valley, the lower half of the border with Jordan, stretches about 100 miles down to the Red Sea. The terrain is flat and dry, and it offers no natural cover. The border with Jordan is almost entirely undefended. And according to IDF estimates, in 2024 alone, about 8,000 people infiltrated across this border. There's major smuggling of weapons and narcotics that feed a drug epidemic among Israel's teens. At the top, they go directly to the terrorists. And at the bottom, in the Arava, it's mostly to the Bedouins. With this border as porous as it is, Israel is essentially relying on the mercies and the strength of its neighbor to the east. In the words of the chief security officer of the Arava Regional Council about how exposed this entire area is, he says, "We wake up every morning and pray for the well-being of the king of Jordan." The Rebbe speaks about how all of Israel is a border city, and especially this area.
Chazer Rebbe zum dritten Mal mit der Chemeroinien, als alle Anshe Zova sagen, als Alpi Cheshm Tzvoi ist kein Sofik nicht. Als man soll umkehren etwas, was in der Gade Amarovis, sei es in der Misergewul von Eretz Yisrael, öffnet das Hof der Ores Lifnei.
Wie der Maimed Isser ist Eretz Yisrael Gvul Yisrael. Jeder Schädlich in Eretz Yisrael nicht weit von dem Gvul. Allahas Kama Vekama, in dem Mekemis as Muchim, Mamos zu dem Sfar, zu dem Gvul, in der Din, am man darf sich stellen Beneshek, und man darf sich in der Sedeche Kol Hoinyonim Kula, ist mechuyev jeder Eid, ton Kol HaTolibei, also sein Neshek in die Boye.
The city of Eilat sits virtually isolated at the southern tip of the desert, with the nearest large city, Beersheba, an almost 3-hour drive away. Its main importance is its access to the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, which are important global trade routes. It's wedged between cliffs and the coastline. Egypt's Sinai Desert is to the west, and the Jordan Mountains are to the east, and it hosts critical logistics and surveillance nodes. The Negev Desert runs alongside Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, with an arbitrary, literal line in the sand separating them. A bit of history. In 1906, a century-long debate between the Ottoman and British empires came to a head over where to draw the border between Israel and Egypt. One proposal called for triangular lines, another was this line here, but in 1906 they agreed on the shortest line from Rafah on the Mediterranean to the Gulf of Aqaba. It was marked by a bunch of survey posts in the desert, but there's no major geographical feature separating the two. The Negev is vast by Israel's standards, but it's barely populated and thinly defended. Here too, smugglers, ISIS-linked terrorist cells, and migrants cross through from the Sinai. For the 10-plus years after the Six-Day War, Israel controlled the Sinai Desert as well. The Sinai is 3 times the size of Israel, and it's got a number of major oil fields and other important minerals. During the years Israel held it, numerous airfields and army bases were built here. And it's surrounded by the best natural barrier that there is, water. It provided 120 miles of strategic separation between Egypt and Israel's previous border. In fact, Egypt's surprise attack of the Yom Kippur War was blunted by the Sinai's massive strategic depth, which forced it to occur a great distance from Israel's population centers. You might ask why I'm even speaking about the Sinai if it's in Egyptian hands now anyways. But we just featured a couple of snippets of the Rebbe's fierce protest to the handing away of the Sinai because of how much it's needed for Israel's security. I want to add 2 quick points to the ones I mentioned earlier. Number 1, the weapons of October 7th basically came entirely from Egypt through the Sinai. That should be enough to end any conversation. In addition, Camp David projected to Israel's neighbors that Israel is open for business, that it's ready to hand away land, even territory that is vital for its security. As we'll explore in the next parameter, that kind of opening can be just as dangerous as any other. The Gaza Strip is just adjacent to the Sinai. For thousands of years, Gaza City was fought over again and again. The Pharaohs, the Philistines, Alexander the Great, the Hashmonai rulers. In World War I, the British fought the Ottomans here. Why were they fighting over it? Well, number one, it's the last fertile, livable area before the desert. But more importantly, it's a bridge between Egypt, which was the world's breadbasket, and the population centers of the Middle East. Controlling this passage meant controlling commerce, travel, and the movement of armies. The Philadelphia corridor is some separation between the hostile population of Egypt and the hostile population of the Gaza Strip, both of which are set on Israel's destruction. When it's controlled by Israel, it serves as a barrier between Gaza and Egypt. In enemy hands, it was used above ground and underground for smuggling operatives and heavy weaponry, which were used in attacks against Israelis, culminating in October 7th. Israel's most secure border is on its west, along the Mediterranean, with the best natural defense, the sea itself. Compared to the others, this is by far the most secure. To the north, the Galil is a source of water, and it contains a lot of farmland. It's also Israel's roughest frontier. Probably the best example of what the Rebbe said earlier about the features of land. The terrain consists mostly of rocky hills with no clear topographic distinction demarcating the 49-mile border between Israel and Lebanon. Israeli towns here are within shooting range of Hezbollah-controlled villages. The trees, caves, and buildings along the slopes conceal movement and allow terrorists to fire all kinds of munitions at Israeli villages and positions along the border. For these same reasons, the terrain hinders a conventional army like the IDF. Terrorists have been leveraging this advantage since the early 1970s, launching thousands of attacks across Israel's border with Lebanon. And finally, the Golan Heights, which is a 445 square mile plateau rising sharply above northern Israel. It has clear sightlines into southern Lebanon and deep into Syria. There's no better example of the 329 teaching that terrain equals life than the Golan. Its topography makes it into a self-contained fortress, a security barrier with steep slopes and precious few access roads. This allows it to be defended with a relatively small number of forces. In the face of the massive Syrian onslaught of the Yom Kippur War, it was only the strategic depth and the bottleneck of the heights that allowed for Israel's miraculous defense. Before Israel took these heights in 1967, Syrian artillery sat on these peaks, constantly shelling the farms, towns, and kibbutzim below. The Golan has numerous layers. The Sea of Galilee is more than 650 feet below sea level, and the highest point is Mount Hermon at 9,200 feet above sea level. The Rebbe speaks of Mount Hermon as the key to control of the entire area. Now that Mount Hermon's highest peaks are in Israel's hands, rather than serving as a blind spot, they can host electronic warfare surveillance systems that track Hezbollah in Lebanon and hostile forces in Syria. When you look at the geography, it reminds you how much Israel needs divine protection, the guardian of Israel who shall not slumber nor sleep. As the Rebbe explains it, the way to achieve God's protection is by listening to his commands, starting with this one right here, 329, that Israel must do everything in its power to protect itself.
Und Bischas mich stellt sich mit der Starkheit, ich darf ja das der einzige Weg, also sei wenn Asati Scholim Beoret, nicht Kirche weiß im Jodi, nur man geht mit dem Psagdim von Shulchan Aruch und unter dem wird werden, von dem muss aber fachat, a Jiras HaKovid, als Chotsch me hei Pton, mit dem Mini, was mich stellt sich mit der Tekev, und beweist, dass hat Neshe Gashmi, wie bald der Rebischter will, als in Zman HaGolus, soll man Eichiton bederech HaTeva, was mir darf tun, kedei, mir soll mehr haben, sich zureden, zu Jiden, anreden zu Jüdischkeit, anreden an Jiden, und anreden an Sachen, was gehört zu Jiden. Und dann das mit der Reifen, wie gesagt, auf Shulchan Aruch, ist auch damals, kommt dazu, davon eine Rede, Emeser, Jiras HaKovid, von allen Völkern und von jeder Volk.
Through this prism, it's abundantly clear Israel can't afford to give away even an inch of what it currently controls. And it needs to be crystal clear about that and to transmit it to the world. This brings us to the final parameter. 329 takes a spotlight to a minor threat and alerts us to the fact that it will soon in fact be a very tangible peril to life. We don't care about hay and straw, right? You wouldn't risk your life to protect animal feed. It's the opening that Torah is cautioning about. The fact that they're becoming comfortable in your terrain, that causes the danger. Now, it needn't even be a physical opening in order to constitute a mortal danger. In fact, a diplomatic posture is far more consequential than hay and straw. An opening can be created with simple words in the diplomatic space. Every diplomatic signal you send has consequences. You might intend to exhibit flexibility, to be the friendly neighbor and earn respect. But if they take it as a show of weakness, you've created an opening. Once you know your own red lines and you're clear that they can't be crossed, you can't go punch a hole in them. If Israel allows talk of handing away control of territory, even if it's only lip service, it translates into immediate physical danger.
את בוודאי יודע טבע האביים, וזה בין הטבע האביים למקום בני נח, שאין להם מסמכים, למצוא טעמים נסתרים, אבל הם עושים המסקנות שהם בדרך הפשוט ביותר, כשנפגשים בידידות וכשמדברים על דבר החזרת שטחים, ואין שאלו עם זה מעיקור על הצער, הרי זה גוף הראי מוכח שיש על דבר מה לדבר.
והעם יחליט. לא ייתכן שזה יוחלט בלי בחירות, בלי משאל.
אתה מדבר על דבר הנסיגה בעצמה, אני מדבר על דבר ההתנהגות של הערביים עם היהודים בירושלים העתיקה עכשיו ובישוע ושומרון.
What's unique about this kind of vulnerability is that it's possible to self-inflict if you're not careful. It's fine to engage in diplomacy, and it's often necessary. But your goal must always be to come away with your people physically safer, with more control of your territory. Talk that puts the land in a more vulnerable, weaker position is creating an opening.
What the Father comes to gain and will learn in Abshat. Aber nicht dvorim amurim leibse hakum shezor al Israel. Als sie kommen zu gehen mit der Zovo und mich stellt weg am Motze und mich sagt, dass mich gekommen le Milchoma und die Milchoma ist auf Nehmen Teven bekar. Na schenken aber, dass mich sagt, dass mich wegstellen, setzen bei kallichdicken Tisch. Uns wird sitzen ein Dritter dabei. Und jener wird patschen über die Plätze und wird sagen, dass helfen beten und helfen dem kach bekach, hat das gesagt, es nicht zu dem Dien. In das Heper von das bis Josef und Heper von das Ramo, sie schreiben befehlig. Aber der Tafel, was mit darf nehmen, Neschek, in jeder Fall die zu bewahren in der Milchome. Und nicht der Fall, die zu bewahren, aber soll bleiben, patschen sich auf die Plätze und nicht schlagen sich einen mit dem Zweiten. Der Tam ist auf zu bewahren, scheleit die Posech, hoore zu lifnei.
There are proposals that are floated every few years or months that are far more concrete and far more perilous than a theft of hay and straw. They usually begin something like this. Don't give away land, but how about some level of self-government for the Arab populations in Israel? Israel would control the international borders, but the people should have civilian administration. In other words, autonomy. The IDF won't need to police millions of Arabs, and it's a way to reduce Israel's exposure to violence while somehow mitigating the threat of terrorism. A middle ground of sorts. According to 329, relinquishing any type of control, even the most abstract, will result in major risk to life. And autonomy, obviously, constitutes a far greater danger than that. It goes way beyond hay and straw. Now, autonomy has a particular additional danger because every time it is discussed, The parties' respective definitions of the terms are entirely different from one another.
Was da seine gekommen Diplomaten, idische, nun gewollt Masge sein, als Autonomie das Adove schon mal bekannt. Mit losen jenem kochen und waschen und geht spazieren, wenn mit es kommen, wie mit es kommen. Aber in jenem Rizini, in jenem Chiyuni, Alaches kamen, was in die Geht zu Neshek und Chulu, werden geben und dem Neshek, was kann sein in der Mishtara bei Palestinian. Mit aber nicht geben dem Neshek, was kann sein an Neshek, auf Agonen, auf Atkofe, Chulu, das gibt mir eine Autonomie oder die, was haben schon Mittag an Autonomie in Schem und in Hebron und in Ramla und Kajitze Bose. Man sieht, wenn sie kleiden meist als ihre Boi Keach und beschaß mit Gitze Autonomie auf viele Zrochis. Und danach heißt das Bepeir, am sagt zur Kopf von dem Rischus, am ist dort Balabatim, wenn nicht mit der Fieten betochen. Und sie will, man soll Pläne wegschicken und dann soll man eine Reis nehmen. Worin Mishtara haben sie das Milachatchila Reis genommen von unter den Füßen dem Boden. Aber man soll können dort stehen, bei der ersten 5 Minuten, was jene wollen sich haben, wo sie haben bekehrt, verliert man die ganze Möglichkeit zu Eisteilen.
In the Camp David Accords, Israel formally agreed to the general concept of autonomy for Israel's Arab population. That was followed immediately by a surge of terror. The Rebbe explained that the Arab street saw those negotiations as legitimizing its narrative and weakening Israel's position. Let's look at an instance where the 329 Security Doctrine was applied. For decades following Israel's 1967 liberation of the Golan Heights, there was heavy international pressure that Israel withdraw in exchange for an end to the state of war with Syria. But the 3 parameters of 329 were applied here. Number 1, every military expert, Jew and non-Jew, said the same thing. The heights are essential for Israel's defense. And Israel's leadership listened to the experts, not the diplomats. Second, what was at stake? Terrain, the most concrete security asset. Land that is invaluable for Israel's security and then some. And 3, how did Israel handle the diplomatic pressure? Overwhelmingly, it held firm. From time to time, an Israeli politician stood up to declare that war with Syria is imminent if we don't return the Golan, but for the most part, those conversations never became too serious. And Israel said no. Israel chose hard physical security over all else. The result? Israel experienced over 50 years of quiet on the Syrian border. Its strategic advantage continues to protect, and countless lives have been spared. The 329 rule has been proven time and time again throughout Jewish history. David fought at Keilah because he knew what we learned today. A danger that seems small can actually be an existential threat. And against overwhelming odds, David won that battle and saved the town and all of Israel. After the Rebbe stood alone insisting that territory cannot be ceded, Crown Heights is now a safe neighborhood with a flourishing Jewish community living alongside its neighbors. And for Israel, every time it has prioritized tangible, physical, practical security above all else, and then stuck with it all the way through, it has achieved just that. 329 works, and today we learned a framework that cuts through the chaos and complexity. Tomorrow morning, when you see a headline, you'll know what questions to ask and identify what will actually work and what will backfire. And with these principles, Israel can face any storm and, God willing, achieve a future of security, success, and enduring peace. But now let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? Almost every security paradigm, even the most solid one, seems to have a shelf life. They last until the phone rings and Washington is on the line. Before you know it, the President of the United States is pressing you hard to change course. And it's as sure as day that the call is going to come. The good news is there is a formula that works in this situation. In the next episode, we'll explore how the Rebbe guided Israel's leadership through dozens of situations over the course of decades, on how to manage its relationship with the United States without compromising its security. We think it'll be the most riveting episode yet as we venture behind the closed doors of Israel's most strategic relationship. I hope you'll join us. If you found today's video informative, please hit the like button and share it with a friend. By reaching more people, we can create real change on the ground. To deepen your understanding of these ideas or to support more episodes like this, please use the links below.